having me. My name is Cristina and I started a 501c3 called the Freedom Revolution. It's a patriotic movement where Americans value America because they understand her uniqueness and her roots. I started the organization because there was 3 things I observed in our culture that drove me so crazy I finally wanted to do something about it. The first thing is that a majority of Americans don't know anything about America. There are people out there who can't identify Independence Day on a calendar, nonetheless tell you who Washington or Lincoln is. That frustrates me. With that lack of understanding comes a lack of gratitude. I believe that if we don't start to appreciate our freedoms and what makes us unique, then we might be at a loss of potentially losing those freedoms, because as the saying goes, you never know what you got until it's gone. Secondly, as you know, our country is very polarized right now. Liberals and conservatives are constantly vilifying each other, and in my experience, sometimes it's hard to have them in the same room without a fight breaking out, people wanting to punch each other in the face. That annoys me. I found that no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, when it comes to our original founding documents, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, when you say those words, those things are usually revered for the most part. So I want to drive the conversation back towards those original things, and hopefully that can have a uniting effect in our country. The last thing is, I kept running into very pessimistic Americans. There are a bunch of people that think that America's headed down the wrong path. Only 26% of Americans think we're on the right path, according to a recent survey. I don't completely agree with those people. I think that we still have a lot in our country to be grateful for, but I understand that a lot of Americans feel frustrated, and I think they also feel impotent. So I want to give those folks a movement that they can get behind, a way that they can feel like they're making a difference. Other organizations out there trying to educate Americans about what we were founded on fall into 2 categories I found. They either are pushing an agenda, they have certain beliefs, and they just use the founders to back up those beliefs and shove it down people's throats, or they're extremely academic and so boring that the average American never gets to hear their message. So what I'd like to do instead is frame American principles in light of them being revolutionary and radical, because they really are. I want to start a unifying global conversational movement. I think that instead of liberals and conservatives being at each other's throats, we should be talking about tyranny versus freedom, that should be the conversation, because that's a global issue and what the American Revolution is really all about. In the same way that these organizations have used billboards, partnered with celebrities, done events, concerts, and run videos to get their complex messages out, we also want to use marketing and media to explain American founding principles to the average American. What qualifies me to do this project is in undergrad, I studied those original primary documents. What better way to learn about what our country is founded on than to read what the founders read, wrote, and said, and did. Secondly, once I graduated, I got a career in marketing and public relations. So this project really combines those 2 passions and expertise for me. But finally, one of my biggest drivers is living as a military spouse. This is my husband. He risks his life pretty much on a daily basis for our freedom. And it hurts my heart that while he's out there risking his life, there are people in America who don't understand that we have something worth fighting for. I don't understand if they don't relate to my sacrifice, but I want to explain to people that we do have something to be grateful for. I started this organization 2 years ago. This is what I've accomplished so far. Some highlights are we partnered with a wine company with a similar mission called Preamble Wines. We also launched a YouTube video series about the Federalist Papers. We created tank tops that are kind of a spoof off of the Che Guevara ones that you'll see. A lot of hipsters wear those Che Guevara ones. We spoofed them and ran a 5K in them last year. And then we also ran a billboard campaign with a quote from the Federalist Papers. Surrounding that campaign, we also did a survey to see how successful that campaign was. We had a whole bunch of cool ideas for what to do this year. The postcard-sized flyer that you have explains some of those ideas, but in looking at our resources, I decided to back off a lot, and we're going to concentrate just on the following projects. The first is Freedom Revolution chapters. They can be discussion groups on campuses, in retirement homes, or even in people's homes. Our team will equip folks to discuss these primary documents in fun, interesting ways. If they're on campuses, they can chalk their campus to show that they're part of the movement, and we'll equip them to host events and things like that. June 30th, the week of Independence Day, we're hosting a Independence Day themed trivia night in a bar, so you can learn about the independence while you're drinking and showing how smart you are. We're also doing American Dream videos. At the end of the year, we will interview folks about things they've accomplished in this country that are only possible here in this land of opportunity. And then finally, we are running a social media campaign where folks can say why they love this country. So things that I could use your help with is, first of all, telling me if this presentation made any sense. And second of all, I could use help with finding more entrepreneurs. It's been an isolating experience to start this very unique project on my own, so I could use some more community of folks who are going through something similar, and then any other ideas and resources you have. Lastly, I want to invite you to our June 13th event. It's a fundraiser called Party Like It's 1776 down in Otay Ranch. We will be celebrating Independence Day early with games and raffle prizes like hot air balloons, and there may or may not be flaming red, white, and blue shots as well. So you can even go on your phone and register right now if you'd like. It's a $20 suggested donation, and that gets you food, drinks, and access to lots of other cool stuff. Thank you.
You were obviously extremely polished. That was within 6 seconds of the 6 minute mark. So.
I crammed a lot in there. I feel like I went a little fast. If you want to cut stuff out, let me know.
Perfect.
Yes.
I think you did a great job. I think it's a really good idea. I think it has huge market potential. In other words, shirts and everything. I think there's, probably just how you execute it. But the one thing that's in my head right now is so on Amazon they studied books. So there's right-wing books and left-wing books. People that bought right-wing books almost never bought left-wing books, and vice versa. So there's very few people buying from both the right and the left on Amazon. And the same is my experience online. People take a really hard stance, right or left. And so my concern would be that pressure is going to come into your organization. Like there's going to be people arguing issues as opposed to just looking at tyranny versus freedom. And then so that would sort of, poison your message, sort of. And have you had any experience with that?
That's absolutely a huge challenge. I put off launching our social media for a while for that reason, because I did social media and I saw how people would say things online that they didn't have the guts to say in person. So in our social media, when people bash Hillary Clinton is an example of something that we've come across. I try and drive it back to those American founding principles. I ask them what specifically they hate Hillary for, because sometimes they don't even know. And what do they think that has to do with the American founding principles. It is a challenge to drive it back to that, but that's kind of our approach, is to make it more of a conversation by driving it back to that. It's definitely a challenge.
A lot of work, though, right?
A lot of work.
Yeah.
Believe me, a lot of work.
I think that can be solved in your tagline, too. You need to have a tagline rather than PR for America, something that says, we're all Americans, or something like that, and bringing it together. So it constantly is driving the fact that it's open to everybody. Because right now it sounds very conservative.
Okay.
And if I didn't know from the outside, I said, oh, there's another thing backed by conservative group or something.
Yeah,
So
the title tends to say conservative, but when your message is out there, it doesn't say that.
Okay.
So that's why I say that that tagline's critical.
Okay. Thank you.
Because, revolution itself can imply not peaceful in my mind, so if it's, I think you just want to be careful how you position it.
Yeah, I mean movement, but I mean,
it is a movement.
Knowing a lot of people in the military, there's a lot of guys who are like, oh my gosh, sign me up, Christina, I totally want to start a revolution, but I have to explain to them it is peaceful. Thank you. That's, yeah, the name might have to change. Sorry, go ahead.
So I have tremendous respect for what you're doing and where this is coming from. A lot of admiration for that, and it's just the fact that you're like, I got to do something. The one thing I thought was in the messaging is 501c3 starting a patriotic movement where Americans value America because they understand her uniqueness and roots. It's good. I'm wondering, what I didn't understand from the message is the fact that this is about transcending our kind of partisan, whiny, ungrateful for what we have mentality, and it didn't fully come across in the message, like where Americans transcend or understand the greatness of America, or like some kind of a way to include what this really is, which is getting us out of that bickering, into a sense of gratitude for what this country really is. Maybe there's a few tweaks in that message, and that would drive it home.
Thank you.
Transcending partisanship.
Transcending part, that's a good.
I definitely think one of the connections you need to make is with Michael Batencourt and PetTech, because I think he has a lot of connections with a lot of military-based entrepreneurs who will have a lot of overlap with you, and I think that would be a great community for you to get involved with.
I have heard of them, but I don't know.
By the way, I don't necessarily agree with the revolution's bad, because people use revolution as a kind of positive thing too. I didn't read it as negative, so, I read it, they use it all the time for positive things as well. There's a group out there, actually I'm going to lunch today, it's called the New Majority, extremely conservative, but they are the big donors, and they are actually trying to bring both sides together and talk. If you can get in front of a group like that, and it costs, I think it's $25,000 a year these people pay just to be a member of this group. There's about 100 people. These are the biggest of the big in the city. If you can get in front of a group like that, just go to one of their events, explain it to them, what you're doing. You'll get, even just to get up, they'll give you a few minutes to get up and talk about it.
The New Majority.
The New
I
Majority.
know one of the guys. You may be able to provide intro too.
Who's that?
I don't have enough cash to get in.
Maybe she can be your lunch date.
It is great, they meet once a month, but it's a great, I think they're having Mike Huckabee today. But it's, nonetheless, that's the kind of group, that people like that would, someone step forward and fund this if they'd like to get in front of a group like that.
Yes.
Questions on I really like you talking, and I see this as kind of the vision, something you want to achieve like in 10 years. And what is something? How do you know you're successful in a year, 5 years? What are the changes, like the metric? So I think that something more practical. That's the part that I see usually on my side.
High in the sky ideas is I'd love for liberals and conservatives to sit down at dinner with each other and be able to have a conversation instead of an argument. As far as actually measuring that in a business way, that's going to be a lot harder.
Well, even just what you just said, I think it was missing from the presentation.
Okay.
So that's kind of like, just having the people sitting together and putting the effort. Now, the part here in the event now makes much more sense.
Can I just people in the back? Yes.
Okay, I like the presentation. I like the way that you identified, the finger pointers and the academics. I would probably follow the academic side. And you're using imagery and simplifying certain things. Something I remember from college was, this wasn't left and right, this was a different topic, but it was still the same concept that applies to left and right. You have people on one side choosing their good thing and comparing it against the other side's bad thing, and vice versa. The other side is comparing their good thing to their bad thing. So one image would be that crisscross of what we should be doing is comparing our good things to each other on an issue, let's say, and addressing our negatives. So that would be an image. And two is maybe a way to get to where you're talking about going is have somebody who's self-identified as left or right, and have them only talk about something they see positive on the other side. And that's how, I guess, issues or topics get vetted in. I'm talking about my other side's good points and vice versa.
As far as where I'm headed right now, I'm trying to stay away from what's going on in politics today and focus on like 1940 and later than that, because it does get tricky once we get into today's issues. So that's kind of outside my scope right now, but that's an interesting idea to get less partisanship. And let me know if you think that's a dumb idea to focus on history.
Actually, what you're after is the 90%, the revolution of the silent majority. If you total up the nutcases on both sides, I call them nutcases, people call them lumens, they're less than 10%. Actually, they're less than 5% if you believe the poll. The solid majority's been the center, it needs a voice. I mean, I'm Republican, but Clinton did some really great things for this country. In the same way Bush did some great things, but the people in the center see it, but they have no way to express it. That making sense.
I completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's frustration, and there is a lot of money available there. I mean, in this block I live in, you probably pick up 100 kids.
I'd love to meet them. You can set that relationship up.
Yeah,
Relationship
everybody
up.
could do that.
In the back.
What type of platform do you have right now to get your message out?
Yes, I have a website, I've got different social media platforms, a couple YouTube videos, but really, we need to put a lot more power behind it.
So if you want, I own a platform, I'll give you a free app. You can build your app for iOS and Android, serve really good content, push messages out.
I'll take
Can I
it.
have
Love
one?
it.
I was just wondering, you said you ran a billboard campaign, you said you did some research to see how it was. What was the rate of success on that?
So, to be completely honest, it was a little ghetto. Mike was one of my volunteers, my friend Mike. We did surveys in Liberty Station asking people what they thought about the relationship between government and human nature, because that's a quote from the Federalist that we put up on the billboard. And people, it was funny to see people's reactions about the survey. So then we did the billboard with that quote, and then we ran those same questions afterwards. And the people that we polled afterwards did answer those responses more in line with what that quote was asserting, but honestly I think it was just coincidence, to be completely honest with you. But we just did that exercise to get into that routine of measuring how successful our campaigns are. And just the experience of polling people in Liberty Station by where the billboard was really helpful in and of itself, just to see how people react to questions about Federalist Papers and our human nature and what our government was founded on.
I'm still trying to figure out kind of how you define success and what's the ultimate. You said one of the goals is to have the liberal and the conservative be able to have dinner. It sounds like another one is education, understanding.
Education and gratitude.
So is there a way to measure that at the end of the day, or are you just going to keep plugging and looking for small advances? As a business lawyer, I'm thinking, how do I measure success quantitatively? I just don't know.
I think that hopefully there's anecdotal ways to measure that. Social media, the way that people are having a conversation online, if they kind of change their response to be a little bit more open-minded and conversational. Or polls, again, I think we could run polls about how people feel about our nation, and if that, hopefully that 26% of people who think that America is going down the right path, or that's probably not a good way to measure. People who are grateful for their country and think that America has something going for her, I'd like to see that number increase. That would be a way to measure it, I guess, is do that same poll.
One other quick thing I was going to mention is the ACLU sponsors an event on Constitution Day every year where they send out people, lawyers who volunteer, to go out and talk to middle schools and high schools about the Constitution, which is a program you may be able to get affiliated with in some way. Maybe you can be part of the education, or maybe your volunteers can participate or collaborate somehow.
So to tie in with what he was just sharing, maybe you could have a certification. So, if you're right wing, do you understand the core values of the left? If you're left, do you understand the core values of the right? Because I think what happens is people get stuck on the dialogue that's in their head. So they have a dialogue. If they hear something coming from the outside world that contradicts their dialogue, they stay in contradiction of my dialogue mode. So their brain is sort of stuck in a state of awareness. But if you back them up, like, how did that dialogue come up in their head? Like, what values did they use to generate that kind of dialogue over time? And so if you back up a liberal and you back up a conservative, a couple of steps, you find out that the core value is the same. But they have to go through a process of backing up. And so if you could do like some kind of educational process where they have to back up all their values and then compare them after they've backed them up, you could then certify them as the Freedom Revolution certified. And so then they would get a sticker or a pin or something to say, I'm Freedom Revolution certified. And so that would be a way of measuring how effective you are. How many people have been Freedom Revolution certified over a period of time?
Thank you.
What's your domain name?
My URL is thefreedomrevolution.org.
Right, everything is right up there on the.
Our social media is all the Freedom Revo radio.
So, just to play off of this, we have a nice little streak going. I'm in education, and so there's a lot of really cool ways for you to implement, whether you want to do like an online course or a series of little modules that result in an actual credential or micro-credential for those who take it. That gives you, your metric would come out of that with how many people have done this little free course. And it's easy to set up. I can talk to you about how that's done. And also, in terms of your metric, it sounds like because education is a part of your goal, you want people to understand the history of the country, certain key facts, certain basic things. That's like, okay, if you live in America, you should probably know this, and this. I mean, yeah, I would say you can build a survey and over a long period of time with a big population, obviously with more funding, with a bigger reach, and really like crank that over the years and see if you can actually drive the number up of people who know who Washington is and who can recognize this element of important American philosophy or something like that.
I like the idea that you get certified to be part of the movement.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you are planning on dividing this up by demographics of some sort and then letting it grow rather than trying to take on the whole country all at once, like an age group. Certainly people in high school look at things differently than people in my age group do.
I'm really targeting...
Perhaps starting in San Diego and growing at some rate. Or, it seems like a big bear to wrestle without chopping it up a little bit.
I'm doing what you suggested, is focusing on millennials. Their age I'm thinking is 18 to 29-year-olds, which I know is still kind of large, and also like you're saying, starting in San Diego kind of as a pilot and then growing it from there, maybe duplicating what we're doing here in another city and letting it continue on from there is what my approach right now. In the back.
Yeah, you have a very interesting concept in Vancouver. There's an organization called Public Salon, Paul Sullivan, that's many of the people. And in the pre-technological revolution, he's brought a similar concept of bringing together diverse interests and producing debate and discussion, etc., or bringing together a common consensus. You might go on his website and check it out. See how he's raised money, which is really a bigger issue. How are you going to raise money? There's a huge amount of money out there that he's been able to tap. In fact, there was a guy in San Diego called City Club, Jordan Mekovich, who did the same identical thing you did in the pre-technological revolution. And he was able to tap both the left and the right very effectively. Now, I think he's somewhat retired. But you might check those two sources because I think the private foundations on the left and the right in the center would, if marketed correctly, might be very conducive to sponsoring you and letting you have your seat down. And those two examples are one of many. Because really what you seem to be doing here is creating a public salon to discuss this issue.
For Awareness Month, why did you go with the American Dream videos instead of some of the other tactics? I guess I would probably use the notably American and ask organizations what they're doing. As you were saying, raising funding is going to be your hardest thing, so if you can find those organizations that are already giving, and then interview them with your mascot or spokesperson, maybe a military figure or somebody along those lines.
I still want to do a lot of those projects, but I just got really overwhelmed, so I'm pushing them to later. And I picked the American Dream videos because we already had a lot of it going, honestly, is why we picked that. But I'm glad to know that you think it's a good idea, so I'll definitely keep that one as one to keep.
You mentioned isolation. I think a lot of people can relate to that. There's a really good co-working space down the street called Co-Merge. Just tell them Chris Glasgow sent you. But there's a lot of nonprofits that were 501c3s out there. It's a good spot.
Thank you.
You might also want to use a book that most Americans know very little about the beginning of this country. Like, probably everyone in this room thinks George Washington was the first president of our country. He was the 11th. Anson was the first. People have no idea what happened in that era.
And I think there's other organizations out there that shame people about that, and that's something I also struggle with, is trying to, there's a value in kind of shaming people and explaining that many Americans don't know anything about America, but that emotion is something I kind of like to stay away from, so that's a delicate, if you have suggestions for how to do that but not do that at the same time, I'm open to those ideas too, but that's something I'm working towards, is staying away from those negative emotions that so many other organizations use. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we were playing okay, this is an idea for the metric, the money, and also the delegating. There was a startup here a few months ago, several months ago. It was called the Artist Odyssey, and they doing something like that, and I'm thinking, there's a lot of charter schools and startup schools that they probably have limited resources and limited programs, and if you had something like that, you could probably get funding for it, and that would be a metric that you could say, well, we've provided this content for these various charter schools.
There's a lot of other organizations out there that are equipping teachers and schools to teach this kind of stuff, so I might partner with them, and as we're doing these Freedom Revolution chapters that are more outside of school and extracurriculars, I might point teachers towards those resources. So I'm trying to, again, I'll partner with them, but I don't want to duplicate what they're doing because they're already doing pretty well at it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sitting here struggling a little bit with, you know, everybody's been talking about diversity and bringing people together, and, you know, basically the two polarized sides. So in your social media, have you limited the comments, or you filtered the comments, or, you know, because people tend to have, you know, those type of people that tend to have a hijacking type of mentality where they just basically take over your whole blog and ruin your message. And I'm trying to figure out how you can bring the community together and have a channel of feedback without having, you know, that negative side. Because any news organization or any type of education, you always have the people on the left and the right who are really feeding that. So what is your thought behind that right now, and what have you done so far?
We've got the typical social media policy that explains, please keep this conversational, please respect other people's rights and opinions. But in addition to that, I use that example of someone, they posted a picture of Hillary Clinton being a witch and saying, I hope she runs into a wall of truth or something. So I asked them what specifically they didn't like about that. And another example, I posted something about Lincoln on Facebook, and someone commented and said that we need more presidents like him. So I said, thank you for your opinion. What specifically did you like about Lincoln that you think we need more of? So I'm just, instead of shutting them down and saying, you're not presenting yourself in a way that I want you to, or you're not saying what I want you to, I'm asking people more about how they feel and how it relates to that founding. And I mean, we're just starting that out, so we'll see how successful that is, but that's been my approach so far.
Back on that so far, because you have a lot of internet keyboard warriors who
Who say stuff that they don't
and then they'll run away once they're questioned about it and never provide any feedback to that.
And out of those 2 times that we have had an issue like that, only one person has actually had a conversation. The other person didn't want to, like you're saying, they just wanted to spit stuff out and then go back in there hiding behind their computer.
So it sounds like a lot of what you're doing is actually personally facilitating this conversation on social media, right? You're getting in there and getting involved with it. So what I'm thinking about is how do you scale, right? And I'm curious, how do you have people identify themselves? Are they using the conventional terms of liberal and conservative? Or have you thought about a new slant on that of, hey, look at these 5 issues. This is how I stand on these issues, right? Or a persona, right? Of not just liberal or conservative, but these new ways of looking at it. Have you thought about that type of stuff?
I feel like that could kind of be in line with what you were saying about creating a certification and a new movement of people who really look at why they believe what they believe.
Oh, they can only get into the chat room if they're certified.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
right?
that's-
But what I'm saying is there's you're grouping people by some like-mindedness, right? It's not necessarily I agree on all of these issues of conservative or liberal, but this specific one I agree on, right? And get people talking about that issue that they agree on, even though they have very differing backgrounds on other issues.
I was going to say the same thing. Go identify exactly what your target demographic, what principle they're all going to be like-minded on, right? So you said 19 to 29 or 18 to 29 in San Diego. You know, what is it, regardless of whether they're liberal or conservative because their parents were or were not, you know, what is it that they can rally behind, and then make that your focus and then grow and then add from there, if that makes sense. You know, I don't know what that principle is or that issue is, but what do they agree on? You know, we know that they all want work-life balance, and they appreciate organic foods and no GMOs and all those sorts. So maybe find something that is
That's
not.
my hope, is I think that those American, if we dive into the principles that our country is founded on, that most people will agree on those. They might agree on how it's executed, but if we can at least get them to agree on the general principle, but identifying those, maybe labeling it as a new way of thinking.
If you can find a way to facilitate it, like I think about your party, right? And my initial gut reaction was, there's gonna be a lot of conservatives. I probably shouldn't put myself in that room because I'll end up arguing with someone, so I don't want to. But if it was presented in a different way, where it's, hey, these are people coming that are very open, we're not gonna use the terms liberal and conservative, but you're gonna have the opportunity to have a real conversation about some important topics, I might be interested in going to that, right? Just a thought.
So we have time for one more question. Anybody?
So this may be really big vision, but like, yeah, the possibilities, like you said, of creating some kind of a lingo or a way to identify this other way, this way of thinking that's grounded in this gratitude and an understanding of values, starts to generate a population group that starts to think differently and think in a new way and vote in a certain way based on a more practical understanding and an appreciation of what's going on in the country. And you start to create, because I always think, we need new ways to articulate ourselves in politics. Like we need a new party or multiple new parties that aren't so mired in the past and can have that way to move forward. So I think you're starting some really cool things here.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback and the suggestions.
Thank you very much.